This is our abstract of Bjarke Ingels, one of the most innovative architects of our time, presented by Ethan Gray, John Leahy, Aidan Ritter, and Aidan Sharp. Bjarke Ingels was born in Copenhagen, Denmark on October 2nd, 1974, and grew up with his mom Elizabeth, his dad Knud, as well as his dog Fidel. As you can see, Copenhagen was quite a nice town when he was growing up. It's crazy to think that eventually he turned it into something even better than that. However, we'll get into that later. Elizabeth was a dentist, and Knud was an engineer. Bjarke grew up loving creativity and wanted to be a cartoonist, although realistically he thought that he would just end up in the military like most citizens of Denmark would at that age. However, Knud realized Bjarke's creative potential and got him into architecture, which was when Bjarke began to study in Barcelona. Bjarke began his studies of architecture in Barcelona, where he started a small firm with his friends. This firm, after a few years, grew into a huge corporation called the Bjarke Ingels Group, aka BIG. This company is stationed in Bjarke's hometown of Copenhagen, which is only fitting considering all of the work that they would eventually do there. That being said, while they originally did most of their work locally, they would eventually go on to expand internationally. This company grew so big that at one point in 2019, when the Netflix documentary episode released, the company had 17 construction sites at once. That is insane numbers for one firm. Just in case you were curious, that huge building in the background is in fact the Bjarke Ingels Group headquarters in Copenhagen. It's a beautiful building. Bjarke Ingels' most notable contributions to society includes his involvement in the creation of his company, Bjarke Ingels Group, of course the main firm in Copenhagen, but also for the most recently founded New York firm. His involvement in and influence on modern architecture has led to numerous innovative and environmentally friendly breakthroughs in the field through projects around the world in countries such as Japan, Denmark, France, Norway, the United States, Switzerland, Italy, the United Kingdom, Sweden, Germany, and China. These innovations would go on to become staples in Bjarke's work and would inspire many others after him.
Personality lies at the heart of the success of many, and no exception is made for Bjarke Ingels. True creativity is rare, and Bjarke takes it to the next level. He is the Jimi Hendrix of architecture, standing out in a league of his own, paving the way for future architects. He bends the rules, strays from standards, and still manages to create functional and visually pleasing buildings. Another key trait of his design is hedonistic sustainability, and that's a coin termed by Bjarke. With an optimistic tone towards the future, he argues that sustainability can and should be pleasurable, giving him the edge over other architects. Sustainability is not impossible, as some may argue, and it's entirely the opposite. With hedonistic sustainability, quite literally building a future where minimizing environmental impacts from buildings is not only possible, but appreciated and even wondered at. Not only is his creativity changing the architectural world, but also changing the way that his work gets out to the world in the form of comics. The Archicomic is a manifesto about the growth and improvement of the architecture in Copenhagen, written by his organization BIG, and can be seen in the image on the right. Bjarke also is a big fan of environmentally friendly work, such as the smokestack and the mountain. which makes these two environmentally friendly, is that the smokestack is designed to blow rings up to a certain height where they won't dissipate at a harmful level. And the mountain incorporates green roofs onto every apartment, which can reduce the temperature of the building by not taking in so much sunlight. Going back to Bjarke's creativity, it's actually what makes him stand out. Architecture is like any other form of art, in that making it big, no pun intended with the name of his organization, requires incredible amounts of creativity. And like I said earlier, true creativity, the Leonardo da Vinci's, the Freddie Mercury's, the Andy Warhol's, is incredibly rare. It takes natural skill, patience, and persistence to develop creativity like that of Bjarke Ingels. And while all architecture requires creativity, creating buildings that not only resemble sculptures but are also environmentally functional is, in my book, immensely impressive and is also incredibly unique. No, going forward, creating environmentally friendly buildings that are extremely functional and visually pleasing will be a cornerstone of what makes our civilization great and what will make our civilization continue to prosper and remain beautiful in the face of global climate change that is looming on us, that and may even pose a threat to our ability to create beautiful things. So by making sustainable things beautiful, we're actually making a solution visually appealing, emotionally appealing, and overall leading us in a very optimistic direction.
The VM House in Copenhagen was a breakthrough in architecture due to its innovative layout that allowed for as many rooms to fit inside as possible while still giving everyone the required living space. This style of apartment complex was very unique and interesting because it took on a lot of inspiration from triangles. The patios are triangular, the overall shape of the building is triangular, and the green areas around the building, such as the hills in the picture, are also triangular. This shape also made for a completely different outlook on the modeling and designing of architecture because most buildings are rectangular, and that's what made Bjarke different. You can also see that because the patios are triangular, it gives each patio a very good amount of sun throughout the day so that the people on the lower floors get just as much sun as the people on the upper floors. This is another one of Bjarke's famous works called The Mountain due to its escalating shape. This was also built in Copenhagen and it was essentially a staircase of homes, another design that fits as many rooms as possible while still keeping everyone spread out. This was very well thought out because having all the homes like a staircase allowed for each of them to get a great view of Copenhagen and each of them to get the required sunlight for their gardens. Each individual home got their own secluded garden, which was what Ingels always tried to incorporate into his designs. This was very special because having buildings take away from the environment, but with his designs, he always tried to incorporate little green areas for people to have gardens or for people to play, which also gives back to the wildlife in the area. As you can see with this building, some of the lower floors have lesser apartments while some of the middle floors have bigger, which allowed for him to optimize the amount of apartments with the amount of space. This is another one of Bjarke's famous works called The Eight House. This was built in Copenhagen and designed with the thought of optimizing space and aesthetic at the same time, while also making the shape of an eight. Along with the previous slides, this is another example of how Bjarke tried to manipulate and play around with different shapes to make unusual buildings. We've previously seen him use triangles in the VM house and mountain-like or staircase-like shapes with the mountain, and this makes him one of the most unique architectures in the world. As you can see, he also incorporated green areas into the roof of certain sections of this building, being designated as garden areas for the people living there. As you can also see, there is a little area inside of the middle of the second half of the building, which was also designed for a little recreation area for people living there. This is another one of Bjarke's famous works called the Lego House. This was also designed in Billund, Denmark, and it brings the imagination and creativity of Lego builds into a life-size scale. This building was obviously designed by Legos, and it's very interesting because each level and block is essentially a brick of a Lego build. This makes this building very unique because, as you can see, the top layer is very similar looking to a Lego brick, but the rest are all kind of spread out and colorful in their own different ways. These different levels and colors make the overall appearance and look of the building very colorful and lively, so it attracts people that are planning to visit it. This is how Bjarke brought attention to his buildings by making them very, very unique compared to other people's buildings. And this is overall what attracted many tourists and still attracts tourists to his art. This is the Serpentine Gallery Pavilion. This was built in 2016 in England and is the design that Bjarke worked on with his team throughout the documentary. This beautiful work of architecture is simply a standard wall. However, the building blocks are distorted in a way that creates a shape so that it gives the illusion that the wall is unzipping. This at the time was a very remarkable design, and it really cemented Bjarke as one of the most creative and interesting architects of the modern era. This work was very different from the previous buildings because it's not actually a building. It's a place where people can enjoy the outside while enjoying the pavilion at the same time. This building, along with all the other buildings, really has attracted many tourists throughout the years and will continue attracting tourists for many years to come.
So one of the most important questions throughout all of this is, how does it relate to engineering? And in fact, architecture and engineering has a lot of overlap. For one, the entire process is very similar. You have a single goal in mind. For engineers, it could be a multitude of things, but for architects in particular, it's about what the building is going to be, whether it be a law firm, a housing area, or just any other mind-blowing thing that like these architects could think of. And throughout the entire time, you have to think about where you're going to be taking that. And throughout the entire design process, you need to have that single goal in mind, because that's what's going to be driving your entire decision-making process, these ideas that you're going to be coming up with. And another thing that can stem from that is those ideas. Like, you take these things in creative ways that essentially elevate that idea and solve that problem, alleviate that goal in different ways that you could have never imagined before. And that architecture, especially with Bjarke Ingels, it has so much room for possibilities. As you can see through his design choices, it doesn't just solve the problem, it doesn't just build a building and make something interesting. And especially with engineering, those creativity spots, those things that you can create, it has like amazing implications and can solve so many things. And for in a more literal aspect, architecture and engineering has so much overlap. You know, engineers are hired for architects because you need to understand weight distribution, material science, like, and understand the cost effectiveness of all of these things. One of the greatest examples of this is Copenhagen, a waste to energy plant that Bjarke Ingels has decided to also turn into a ski resort in the winter. And out of all the ideas he has come up with, this is probably one of the most creative, because it takes something very kind of looked down on, like power plants. There's a lot of stigma when it comes to energy production, especially with oil, and just kind of a general uncleanliness of it. And instead of just building a regular old thing, he decides to elevate that and turn it into the exact opposite. He makes it a place where life can grow, as you can see in the picture here. In the springtime and summertime, plant life can grow along with the other buildings that he's designed that have a strong center on floral and just agricultural growth. And in the winter, it's a place where all kinds of people can just go and have fun. It's something completely outlandish that through architecture has become something greater than the initial thought. Like he could have just built a regular old power plant that had all the rooms it needed, all the space it needed to fit. But instead of just doing that, he decided to innovate, decided to excel and make this incredible, beautiful thing. And even it excels beyond just looks and beauty of it. There's functionality to it as well. The smokestack he has designed doesn't just emit a complete flowing out. It creates rings that go out in periodic times, and it's a complete innovation from what has previously been done. That has been our project, and we hope you enjoy.